We're dead, dude.
Station.
You have sunk my battleship.
Excellent!
Your dear old granny.
Catch you later, God!
They melted me.
Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey is one of those rare examples where the sequel outdoes the original in almost every way. Let me explain, dudes. This is FanScription. After almost 30 years since the last film and several release date changes, the much anticipated Bill and Ted Face the Music is finally hitting VOD and some theaters mere days from the posting of this video. So it's time to have a most excellent celebration of these characters and the movies that feature them. Even the TV shows, both animated and live action, in addition to the comic book series, deserve acknowledgement. Like many of you, I grew up watching the Bill and Ted movies. I love the goofy sincerity of the characters, the hijinks they get themselves into, and the optimistic legacy they've contributed to pop culture. But for me personally, it wasn't until the second film that I became enthralled with just how unique this franchise and the creative team behind it truly were. As I've come to find out, liking Bogus Journey more than Excellent Adventure is a bit of an unpopular opinion. To state my case, we have to compare and contrast both films. So let's begin with the unlikely success that started it all, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. The first Bill and Ted movie is a rewatchable, classic 80s sci-fi comedy. The premise is efficaciously simplistic, our main characters are established well, and it's a funny, goofy 90-minute romp through the past, present, and future. It has quotable lines, memorable moments, and made the duo of Bill and Ted household names. I enjoyed it quite a bit when I was a kid. The relatable plot of two laid-back but well-meaning slackers trying to pass a history class created something for a younger audience to latch onto. While there were a handful of adult jokes in the film,
69, dudes!
Some of which have aged pretty poorly, it's mostly a wacky kid/teens movie. Removing my nostalgia for it kind of exposes just how thin the story is. While something like Back to the Future remains as timeless as ever with all-around exceptional filmmaking, Excellent Adventure is pretty surface level. There's not much to dig into, even for a time-traveling comedy. And I know maybe I'm looking for something that wasn't meant to be there, but the first cut of this film was almost 2.5 hours long. They cut nearly an hour out of this thing. There were also multiple production and post-production issues throughout the making of the film, which likely contributed to its reduced length. It's more obvious to see when looking back on it now, but it's almost like a diet movie. Tastes pretty similar to the real thing, but afterward, you don't really feel full. Besides the phone booth time machine and a few comedy bits, the one thing that makes it rise above other films from the same era is the main characters. Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves' Bill and Ted portrayals are indisputably iconic. Wrapped under the blanket of a California Valley Boys dialect, they're very thoughtful, optimistic, and genuine. That's why within the context of the movie, you can see how they might bring about an age of enlightenment and world peace.
Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes! Good one, dude.
They are supremely likable in nearly everything they do, and we were all rooting for them right away. But the repetitive nature and somewhat clunky structure of Excellent Adventure did not put these characters in a situation where they could reach their full potential. No, that came with the 1991 sequel, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
It's possibly the most absurd film ever made.
Originally titled Bill and Ted Go to Hell, this sequel was always meant to be anything but conventional. Instead of retreading the winning time travel formula of Excellent Adventure, creators and writers Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon decided to take the duo on a trip through the afterlife and beyond.
Bill and Ted, the Grim Reaper, two small 3-foot aliens. Whole thing is ridiculous.
To take the franchise this far from its simplistic origin could have easily been a failure. The plot this time around was kind of elaborate. It featured almost experimental visuals and upped the ante in terms of surreality, wacky characters, and even a tinge of darkness. Some of its highbrow influences, like the Seventh Seal, were more apparent, and the character of Station alone shows how far out they were willing to go. but the core of this sequel is why it works, why we don't get lost in the bizarre visuals and locations. That core is Bill and Ted themselves. Their characters are never compromised. This is simply a much better and riskier story that features wild stallions as we knew them from the original. I'd argue they're even more likable in this movie. Plus, we get to see more of Reeves and Winter playing an evil version of the duo that on paper sounds kind of lazy, but works really well in the film. Alex Winter even played Bill's own grandmother in a legitimately unsettling scene.
How about a kiss?
The story revolves around those evil robot versions of Bill and Ted being sent back to the past by the villain Chuck DeNomolos. Their mission is to kill the wild stallions and stop their idyllic future from coming to fruition. They succeed, and the original duo are forced to traverse the afterlife, attempting to make their way back before the damage their doubles do becomes permanent. Right away, there's more at stake, and this vastly different plot seemed like the illogical next step, in a good way, of course. Killing our heroes off at the end of the first act led to unexpected possibilities, especially if you were only familiar with the first film like I was when I first saw Bogus Journey in the mid-90s. One of those possibilities included befriending the Grim Reaper.
Don't patronize me.
Whoa, whatever, dude. You got a lot to learn about sportsmanship.
William Sadler is hilarious in this movie. His interactions with the boys and little solo moments are so absurd that he becomes one of the most memorable highlights.
What about me? I made the wigs.
Okay, Death.
I hope to do shopping.
All right.
See you real soon.
After the duo unsuccessfully try and communicate with the living, they're sent to hell for some of the best scenes in the film. They're forced to choose their own eternity, with different rooms presenting distinctive versions of their own personal hell. The distorted designs and dramatic lighting of the sets here are visually striking and give off an early Tim Burton-type vibe. By far, the most disturbing room sees Bill transformed into a child at a twisted birthday party for his decaying grandmother. As mentioned earlier, Alex Winter plays her under some convincing makeup. It's actually a really good short performance.
Come on.
Following their amusing defeat of death in another striking set piece, they head for heaven. That design is pretty well done for the time period, and while not quite as impressive as hell, it looks great and is consistent with the overall quality of the movie. After talking to God himself in another humorous exchange, we're introduced to the double alien scientist, Station. They recruit him to build good robot versions of themselves to destroy the evil ones on Earth, but first, the Martians must combine. That is so amazingly weird. But it doesn't stop there. The good robot versions of Bill and Ted are constructed, and my goodness, they look incredible. The performers they got to move in that mechanical way also deserve a lot of credit for selling the illusion. Here, I think, is a good time to talk about the effects and character designs. Obviously, good robot Bill and Ted are awesome, but some of the practical effects work on evil Bill and Ted is so refreshing to see nowadays. Now, all this isn't to say Bogus Journey is perfect. Bill and Ted's Princess Fiancés could have been expanded on a little more, the climax pre-musical performance is a little rushed, and I was never a big fan of the remember to do this so we can beat the bad guy time travel plot device. Also, DeLanomos is kind of a lame main villain. I love Joss Ackland, but I don't think we really needed that character the way he was presented. And finally, I always thought George Carlin's Rufus wasn't in either of these films nearly enough. Unfortunately, that didn't change in the sequel. But hey, we got him, Pam Grier, and more fun cameos, plus a bodacious ending musical performance to accompany a quality montage of wild stallions achieving their destiny. The Kiss version of God Gave Rock and Roll to You was the perfect song to go out on, and if the franchise ended there, I would be totally fine with it, because Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey utilized these characters to the fullest degree. It didn't feel like the bits were repeating like an Excellent Adventure. We got something totally new and unexpected. It's just a more unique, original, focused, heartfelt, character-driven, visually appealing, and funny movie. To me, there's no comparison. Strangely, I almost feel the same way when I look at something like Return to Oz. It'll never replace the original, but it was so abnormal and dark that it really captured my imagination when I was younger, and getting older allowed me to re-examine films like that and Bogus Journey for influences I was unaware of, the elements that differentiate them from the originals, and the jokes that are even funnier now. If it's been a while since you've seen these films, I'd encourage a rewatch. And don't skip Bogus Journey. Excellent Adventure may be remembered more fondly, but you might just see that the sequel is much better than you recall. If for nothing else, it deserves more love for the hard work that went into every level of production to make it different, unique, and gleefully surreal. How will Bill and Ted Face the Music hold up as the third film in this newly minted trilogy? I don't know about you, but I'm stoked to find out. What are some sequels you think need more attention and/or outdo the original? Let me know in the comments. And make sure you check out the FanScription podcast, where I'll go a little deeper into my thoughts here and maybe even discuss the new Bill and Ted movie. Until next time, be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.